Hello, I'm Jasmine Harris. Did you know that before 1920 in the United States of America, women weren't allowed to vote at all in any election? Well, I'm here to inform you on how women finally received that right to vote and what women voting turnout looks like today. So let's go ahead and look at the history. For years, only men were allowed to vote. Women felt less than because of this. They were expected to sit on the sidelines and watch men run the government and take over the politics. After years of injustice, women wanted that change. Women such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucetta Mott, who lived in New York City, decided to make that change together. They began fighting for their right to vote. Women began supporting their movement, and eventually the movement reached outside of New York City. Then, Elizabeth Stanton eventually met Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony was a big woman supporter for the women's rights movement. She wanted that right to vote as well. After discussing their wants and seeing that they had similar goals in mind, they decided to form what is known as the National Women's Suffrage Association, also known as the NWSA. During the same time, Lucy Stone formed the American Women's Suffrage Association, also known as the AWSA. She was also heavily involved in the women's rights movement and also wanted that right to vote. However, she didn't want to join forces with the NWSA that Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton had formed because she disagreed with the NWSA over the passage of the 14th and 15th Amendment. However, both of these associations recognized that they needed to band together in order to make a bigger impact. They also needed more funding. Once they merged, they became the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Women from all over started to band together to start lobbying and peaceful protesting and marching in order to show their desire to vote. They went state by state and started making change in the West at first. However, the East was not as easy to give in to these women. However, Illinois became the first East state to grant women the right to vote. Future Congressman Ruth McCormick was the lobbyist that helped make that happen. This was a monumental moment for these women and the women's rights movement. These women fought for 20 years, going state by state to make the change they wanted to see. NAWSA advocated and lobbied until they reached their desired outcome. I'm sure after what seemed like 100 years, these women won over Tennessee, making Tennessee the 36th state to approve the 19th Amendment. That was monumental. As verified by the National Archives, on August 18th of 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified and granted women the right to vote. These women were ecstatic. Now that we're in the year 2020, do you wonder if women are still passionate about voting? Are women still voting? Well, I'm here to also answer that question for you. According to PEW Research Center, women have a higher turnout voter rate by a 4% point gap than men do. That means that more women are voting than men. This includes races of white, Hispanic, Asian, and black. That is monumental as well. So that answers your question on if women are still voting. Women are definitely still voting, and they will continue to do so as long as we know. In conclusion, it is crazy to think that nearly 100 years ago, women like myself and those who are listening were unable to vote. Women were unable to receive that equal opportunity that men had, and they were not granted the rights that they were supposed to have from the beginning. However, now women have a higher voter turnout than men do. Thanks to thousands of women and some men who lobbied, protested, and advocated for women's rights, women can successfully vote anywhere in the United States and in every election. Women now, because of the women's rights movement, are now in Congress, Senate, House of Representatives, and we now even have a woman that is running for office. Without these women who started the women's rights movement and fought for the right to vote, I would not be able to vote, and all these women that are now in Congress and the House of Representatives and all throughout the world can now make a difference in the government. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned so much about this movement.